Way back in 2008, Rockstar Games brought us back to Liberty City, but through a totally new pair of eyes, the eyes of Niko Bellic. And he wasn't your typical charming kingpin climbing the ladder or some wild anarchist. Nope, he was an ex-soldier, an immigrant, and a man absolutely haunted by his past. So today, we're going to dig into why Niko's story isn't just another power fantasy. It's one of the deepest, most profound tragedies in all of gaming.
See, Niko shows up on this rusty cargo ship, completely sold on these wild stories from his cousin Roman about making it big in the land of opportunity. But he's not really looking for a mansion and sports cars. He's looking for an escape from a life of violence, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to find the man who betrayed his army unit all those years ago. But Liberty City, well, it's got plenty of its own ghosts, and it's no place for a fresh start.
And that right there is the heart of it all. Niko's story isn't about some good guy getting corrupted by the big bad city. It's about a man who was already broken by war, stepping off one battlefield and right onto another, just one with, taller buildings and different uniforms. So the first act of this whole tragedy kicks off with this incredibly powerful lie, the false promise of the American dream. It's about what Liberty City really has in store for a guy like him. A lot of trauma survivors think if they can just change their environment, they can change themselves. But as Niko finds out the hard way, trauma, it travels with you. I mean, look at this. His cousin Roman is emailing him about living the high life. But what does Niko find when he gets there? A grimy little apartment and loan sharks breathing down their necks. The dream doesn't just fade away, it shatters the second he steps off the boat. He's immediately confronted with the fact that it was all a fantasy. And this quote, this is so important. It shows you that Niko's cynicism isn't something he picked up in Liberty City. It's the hard-earned wisdom of a man who already knows you can't escape your past. He came to America kind of hoping he'd be proven wrong, but his life had already taught him you don't just drop your baggage at the border. To really, truly understand why Niko does what he does in Liberty City, we have to look at the man he was before he ever arrived. We have to talk about the soldier forged in the absolute horrors of the Yugoslav wars.
So Niko isn't just dealing with PTSD, which is, the trauma of seeing terrible things. He's dealing with something deeper, moral injury. That's the guilt, the shame that comes from participating in violence, from doing things that shattered his own idea of who he was. He knew he was a killer long before any mob boss hired him.
And this right here, this is the event that completely broke him. His unit, his friends, guys from his own village, they were betrayed and just slaughtered. He was one of only 3 guys who made it out alive. And that survivor's guilt, that burning need for revenge, that's not some side quest. It's the engine driving his entire story. Okay, so he's carrying all that baggage, and he arrives in Liberty City. And what does he find? Not peace, not a quiet life. He finds a world that has a very, very specific use for a man with his particular set of skills. The city just becomes a new war, and he's the same old soldier. And man, it happens so fast. He's almost immediately pulled into the orbit of violent men, because violence is the language he knows. And frankly, it's the only language the criminal underworld speaks. He doesn't enjoy this stuff. He's using it because it's a survival instinct he just can't switch off.
And this is absolutely essential to understand. Liberty City isn't the villain here. It didn't corrupt some good, innocent man. No, it was the perfect ecosystem for a man who was already a killer. It just gave his violence a new purpose, whether that was for revenge, for money, or just plain survival.
So this all builds and builds until the end of the game, where Rockstar does something just brilliant. They give Niko, and by extension, they give you, the player, a major choice. It's the ultimate illusion of having control over your own destiny.
The game literally gives you 2 different paths. It asks you, after everything you've been through, what's more important to you, revenge or money? So can you, the player, actually steer Niko towards a happy ending? Can you save him?
So let's say you pick the first option. You choose honor. You finally get your revenge on Dmitri, the guy who's been a thorn in your side from the very beginning. But what's the cost? At his cousin's wedding, a vengeful mob boss tries to kill Niko in a drive-by, but instead, he murders Kate, the one person who represented any kind of peaceful future for him.
All right, so what about the other path? The smart one. You choose the deal, you go for the money. Well, surprise, surprise, Dmitri betrays you anyway and sends a hitman to the wedding. And this time, a stray bullet hits and kills Roman, the entire reason Niko even came to America in the first place.
And this is the devastating punchline. There is no right choice. There is no happy ending. The game literally forces you, the player, to experience Niko's futility firsthand. Whether he chooses revenge or wealth, the result is the exact same: deep, tragic loss. Peace was never actually on the table. And that tragic structure, that's precisely what makes Niko such an iconic character. Most open-world games are all about empowering you, making you feel like a badass. Grand Theft Auto 4 is about the exact opposite. And look, this was all completely intentional. Even his creators, like Dan Houser, said the goal was to make someone more complex. Niko isn't just a cold-hearted killer. He's a guy capable of real warmth and loyalty, who is constantly questioning the violent world he's stuck in. And that conflict, that duality, is what makes his story so damn compelling.
When you put him side by side with other protagonists, the difference is just staggering. A typical hero is climbing the criminal ladder for power and money. Niko's just trying to find some closure and stay alive. They embrace the chaos. He's completely worn out by it. They are a power fantasy for you to live out. He is a warning.
So in the end, you don't play as Niko Bellic to feel powerful. You play as him to experience the story of a man for whom violence isn't a choice. It's not a thrill, it's a curse. It's a language he just can't stop speaking because it's the only one anyone around him seems to understand. At the end of the day, Niko's tragedy isn't that he failed to achieve the American dream. It's that the American dream was just another battlefield in a war that started a long, long time ago. A war that lives inside of him, and one from which he can never, ever be discharged.